of our professional series webinars. This one is on accounting, what's new with CSD. And what I'd like to do is let everyone know that we are recording the session today. And if you do have questions during the webinar, I would ask that you please enter them into the chat. We'll have a couple of breaks during the session where we'll take those questions from you. And I'd like to introduce our presenters today. So initially kicking things off will be Deanne Zwart, who is an NSA Senior Business Consultant, and that'll be followed up by Kathy Lundquist, our VP of Professional Services, who will bring it on home for us. And with that, Deanne, take it away.
Okay, so yes, thank you everyone for joining us today to talk about what's new in accounting in CSD. And that was Brian, our host. A little bit about NSA, our little housekeeping bit here, who we are. Me and Kathy, if you don't know us yet, and our contact information. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not really a PowerPoint person, so we're like exceeding my expertise here on that. So here is here is our list of what we're going to cover today. We split this very nicely. Accounting people, we have 10. We're each doing 5. So these are the functions that we are going to go over. We've got some new AP things, a few AR things. Kathy's going to talk about some new reporting, and a big one, importing payment from Excel. So I'm not going to steal her thunder, but these are the options that we are going to be going over. So might as well start in 8P, the fun part. We have some new payment options. So what these are going to do, and I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to show, is we can allow picking what we want to actually pay by period. So our AP's age now, our regular 30, 60, 90, and or, can everybody hear me okay? Yep, okay. But we can now actually pick what we want to pay by that. That's one thing. And another thing is we've got vendor types. A lot of us pick how we're going to do our check processing run by vendor type. ACH, expense. We pay some on Mondays, some on Tuesdays. You set up different vendor types mostly for that reason. We now can override that. So maybe it's not the way we usually do this vendor, but for this particular time we want to. And we have an option here that is very important on that, which I'll get into. So I am going to go through how we're going to actually set this up. In our APE, we've already run our cash requirements report. And we want to pick, we see what is all picked, but we want to look at what's in bucket 2. Maybe I should pick what's in bucket 2 or a different bucket. If I go in to what I just ran in my APEE, I first need to make sure that my entry defaults are turned on appropriately so I get to see this periods. So in entry defaults, we need to check on allow payment allocation by period and how many periods we want to show. If you don't have security to do so, you're going to have to talk to your IT folks to get you security so that you can see that. So here's my APEE. I click on periods, and here's all my vendors that showed up on that check processing run and the periods that I told it to show me. So I don't have anything picked under ACE Chemical but I see something in period 2, and I really think I should pick up period 2 for this particular vendor. I check on that. Now in the blue bar, it opens up those periods that I told it to show me. I can click on period 2, pay invoices. Now when I click back over on payments and I sort, I can see that 2 invoices were picked up for period 2. So just kind of handy in that if there's certain buckets, certain aging that you missed, you can pick it up that way now in APEE. The other one is if we're running our pay invoices due by vendor type, and I go in, I'm going to show you my APEE that I ran for ACH. I have one vendor that's on vendor type ACH. But there's another one. How do I get that in there? I just want it for this one time because I want to run this check on Monday. It's Monday when I pay my ACH vendors. Instead of going into the vendor and playing with it there, I have this new vendor payment options. I can come in here, just click search, shows all my vendors. But this EDI vendor is the one that I really want to include in this particular run. When I click on the arrow, I've got an override vendor type. So I put ACH in that override vendor type. So for this time only, the vendor type is going to be ACH. And I actually have a requested dollar amount here. The vendor is looking for $500 to make them happy. So I can put that in there as a reference to help guide how many invoices I'm picking up to get to that $500. So here's the kicker. When I go into my APRC, they changed one of our options on us. Option number 16. Out of the box, right now, even with this, it's a yes, no. We have to go into our AO options and change this to look like this. And I think Kathy just put up that we'll send out the slide deck on this, and I have it on the slide deck. But we need to make this be a field N, F, or D. If we don't do that, you can put whatever you want in that vendor payment options, and it's not going to work. So if I quickly just show you in the admin options and under report items, we can change what our options are. It needs to have an N for no. No means it's not going to do any overrides. D is the override. So if I want this to pick up what I put in this vendor payment options, I need to make it a D. So I need to change my admin options. The other clinker on this, make sure and change the standard to site specific. Because if you don't, next month, it's going to revert back to the yes, no, and it's not going to work. Which I talked about this at TUG. I didn't do it, and yesterday I was quickly having to fix this to get ready for today because it reverted back with each patch update.
Yeah, it's not the most intuitive, but it's
No,
pretty
it's
critical
not.
for separation of duties if you don't want people going in and maintaining the vendors and everything like that to be able to come back, do that one-time override.
Yep.
And I will stop and let you continue, Deanne.
No, and that's a good point. This is saving folks from going in and having to touch that vendor setup. They can go in and override. Then when I set that to D, and thank you, Kathy, and I go in and I pick the one that I ran after, here's that vendor that I put that in. Didn't touch the vendor, it's an override. So when I do my save, my pay invoices due, it clears itself out. So you don't have to remember to go back in there and take that out. It just reverts back to whatever was on the vendor record, no override. The other thing that does, remember I said I put the $500 in there? So when I click back on periods, so really you want both in place, there's my $500. And it's going to tell me here in total how much I picked up and if I've met that requested amount. So kind of some nice options there, giving us a little leeway on different ways of picking up our invoices for payment. And this is just my slide deck in case the world came crashing down and I could still talk about it. So what they've done though is that's fine if it's just one, but let's say you want to pick up 10 and you don't want to go into that APEV is the new acronym. We do have data import tools and mass maintenance that have these fields that you can use both of those tools to update more than one record. Again, as soon as you run your pay invoices due, this override reverts, clears itself out, and you're set to go again. That's one of the new things. Vendor Inquiry Center. Search for an invoice without a vendor number. So we can go into our APIV. Let me hit search again. I was practicing before we got on. And I've got an invoice number. Don't know what the vendor is. I put in the invoice number. And the system takes us right to that vendor inquiry with that invoice without having to know what the vendor is. So a lot easier for lookup. Switch gears a little bit. Credit. We have our credit release now has a sales territory. So if I go into my credit release screen, and I was testing a little bit, but if I click search, I come in here, I'm a credit person, I've got my sales territory now that I can sort on, but I only work for the Northeast. Actually, I only work for the Southeast. I don't want to have to scroll through all Northeast. So you can either use the little lookup box and put in the territory. So now I'm only seeing the group of invoices, group of customers that are in my territory that I'm supposed to deal with. Or you've got the show filter row, which allows you to filter as well. So it's a nice way, you know, clicking on the columns and sorting is really nice. It gets you there. But being able to look up your territory, either by the lookup or the filter row, makes it so much nicer to find the right ones that you want to work with and release. So just like we saw in AP, we can now also post our cash receipts by period balances. This one goes into the same area that I was in before. You have to have entry defaults or access to it. And then you need to turn on allow cash allocation by period balances. Don't have access to that, ask your IT department. There's ways that they can do it and save it for you so that you have access to that. Once you turn it on, we enter in our payment, our customer, in our demo environment. I noticed this morning was very slow. But now we've got period balances as a new tab. And when I click on that, here's my 430224. That matches what I entered. I click apply. Now when I look at my invoices, I look at my paid in full, I only had one invoice in that bucket, but it would pick all the invoices in that particular bucket. So it's really handy if you've got a customer that pays by statement or something like that, that they've got the dollars that match up to the buckets. Now you don't have to go down the list. You can just turn on period balances and post cash by that way. Again, you have to have access to be able to get that. It's something that you have to turn on with entry defaults. It's not something that's just there. Any questions?
Okay, Deanne, so we do have a couple questions.
Okay.
So let's see here. So thank you, Marley. So what happens when there is more than one vendor with a matching invoice number for APIV?
I have not tried that. I do not know.
It will find multiple. I've tried it.
Does it?
Yeah, it'll find them in
Okay.
a list.
Okay, great.
So
And
it
we have
won't. So it won't. It won't fill in the vendor. It'll show the multiple invoices here.
Yep. If you want,
Cool.
you can try testing that out when I'm doing my side of the presentation, then flip back over to that.
Sure.
And when you
I
get a
will do
chance,
that.
Deanne, give me control access too.
okay,
Yes,
and we have
for it.
another question as well from Linda Wright. So thank you, Linda. So CSD makes changes to reports and does not update the SASSR record to roll out the change.
Right. In this case, they did. It was very confusing.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then
I had to search on that one. I couldn't get it to work when I first tried, and it took going to Infor Campus and watching the video, and I don't even think it was explicitly mentioned there. It was, I was going frame by frame, and I'm like, there's something different here, and I looked at the report, and it was different.
Okay, great. Thank you, Deanne. So another one from Amy here. Is the payment by period balance available in ARELE as well, or any update there?
I do not know. Do you know, Kathy?
Yeah, it's not available for Lockbox yet.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, guys, please feel free to submit your questions. I've got one more, Deanne.
Okay.
So tried the new vendor payment options, but it didn't work. Do you have to go back into vendor payment options to clear the changes?
No, if it didn't work, it didn't work. But more than likely, I would go in and check that report and make sure that you have the option for D. Make sure it's not the yes, no. Make sure you're putting a D in there, and then it should work.
Excellent. Well, that's all the questions we have for now. So Kathy, over to you.
Awesome. Alrighty. Actually, I think I'll stop showing myself on screen so that I'm not distracted by making weird faces. Okay. So we're going to talk about my 5 items are starting off with the export to Excel. And as some of you know, what Deanne and I are going over with this webinar is items that have been added within the last year. Export to Excel was added actually just a little bit over a year ago, but I've seen a lot of people run into issues with it and also not know which reports altogether are included. So if you'd like a copy of the slide deck, feel free to email us afterwards for this list. But these are considered the primary reports that the accounting teams are interested in. So it isn't all reports. I believe this is 17 reports. And there is a trick to it, and pretty similar to what Deanne said, which is that it's not necessarily the most documented. We'd like to walk you through what the trick is to it so that you can make the most use out of these export to Excel on your reports. The first thing that I'll mention is that you see that the print options should be set to yes. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's set to no, and that the print output type, when you click in the drop down, you will see the option for Excel. So let me shrink this out of the way and open up my CSD. So I'm going to go in here and I'll use GLRT as an example. So my trial balance, I'm going to do a new one time, and I'm going to illustrate this 3 different ways. So I'm just going to change my title, GLRT no for options. Let me scroll down. And this is what I'm talking about as far as options. For your Excel reports, or the reports that you're going to be printing in Excel, you're going to want to make sure that this print options page is set to yes or checked. You can also set the AO for these reports so that it defaults to that. And I'm going to show you why you want that. The next thing I'll show you is that in the drop down, this is how you can tell it's a report that can go to Excel. So I'm going to click on Excel, and then I'm going to click next, next. I don't want to see the open journals on this one. Next, save. I'm going to run this report 3 times because I'm going to compare them to each other. So this next one I'll call GLRT yes options. And what I'm going to change on this is I'm going to check the options page. Again, I'm outputting to Excel, not CSV. This actually does go to Excel. And I'm going to say, again, no to print the open journals. And then the third one, I'll say that I want to see the options and the open journals, GLRT, yes, options, yes, journal. And then I'm going to go down here and check the options page. So I'm going to pause right here. It is really easy to forget to do this, which is why I'm going to make the recommendation that you go into the administrator options or speak to your IT team to set that to default to yes. And I'll show you after this how you would do that so that if you're running new one-time reports, it automatically remembers that. And I'm going to click this and go next. And I'm going to say yes this time to display open journals. And while those, let's see, do I have all 3 ready? So first I'll show you what it looks like when I said no to the options. And that's going to launch an Excel spreadsheet. I'll open that. And this is the ugliness that you get when you say GL options no. You're going to notice that you have 2 tabs, GL options and transactions. And this is what I see people looking at going, this is weird. This doesn't make sense. This looks all messed up. Yeah, that's right. Because the thing that you didn't do is set the options to yes. So this is wonky all over the place and you end up still having to format it. It's horrible, but that's not the way to run it. So let me show you with this next one, which is the option set to yes. Because it is expecting, CSD is expecting there to be an options tab. So if you say no to it, it's going to take the data that should be in your beautiful report and just toss it on that first tab. Extremely useless. So what this does when you run it correctly with the option set to yes is it takes the options and puts them on the first tab and then the actual report and puts them on the second tab. And you can just, double click on that and move them out to the proper width. So what's good about this is it lets you see exactly how you ran it, right? I ran it for period 6, like the current period. I didn't put in any limits. I didn't say I said display open journals equals no. I didn't say anything special as far as limiting the divisions or the departments. Now I'm going to close that one, and I'll show you what this last one looks like, because I get asked this question a lot too. Well, what if I want to see the open journals? I don't want it messing up my report. Well, again, if you remember to check the options tab. So I'll just show you this. So this is my options, right? So no different. Transactions tab, which is actually should be called report, but I digress. And then this strangely named logger info, that actually shows you your open journals. So if I say yes to my options, the report won't screw up, and then it's going to take and put my transactions on the second tab or my report. And then on the third tab, it will show me my open journals. So this way, it doesn't mess the report up. So for a lot of you who thought this thing doesn't work, it actually does, but there's a couple of tricks with it. Well, the biggest trick is actually to set that administrator option. So I'm going to show you where that would be set. Let me close out of this, and I'll close that open journal that I had for illustration purposes. I'm going to get into the administrator options, which your sysadmin would get into. And then under system, reports, similar to where Deanne was showing you. General ledger, GLRT, whoops. That was menu. And let's see, RT. There we go, general ledger trial balance. And in here, you would edit it and check this print options to yes and default that. Now you could make that site specific so it doesn't get overwritten with each update, but that by me doing that, and I'll show you now when I go in to run this report, GLRT, new, one time. Now you see that at least remembers the print options page, which is a lot handier than me having to remember it each time. It's just too easy to blow past and forget. And, for such a small change in the default, I think that's a pretty easy one. Okay, now get back to my presentation. The next is balancing reports with the division group option. So this allows us to run our primary accounting balancing reports. And by that, I mean, these are the reports that we run to agree our general ledger to our subsidiary ledger. So for example, if we say I've got $3 million in my inventory, I should be able to run a report that agrees to that number. So these are the reports that are supposed to agree to the general ledger. And then, of course, there's the unusual one like the APRC. So it's not 100% of the reports, but it's this list of reports that now has the option for division group. This is applicable to companies that are using full divisionalization. So I'll show you where the setups are for that. And then what the report itself looks like. So getting back over here. So first is the setups. I'm going into the system tables, SASTT. And in here, under division, I'll first show you the division. Within the divisions, there's this option to put them into a group. So you see in the setup, you can say this division belongs to a specific group. It's not required, it's optional. So I'm going to show you where the division group is set up. So I would go in here, and all I'm doing is defining the group. So I'm calling this one NE for Northeast. I'm giving it a name, and then I'm going in and saying, okay, I've created these division groups, and now I'm going to go into my divisions and assign them into a group. They don't have to be in any particular order. So I've taken a couple of these, and let's see. put them into the Northeast division group, which is what my NE is for. So first you set up the divisions, then you set up division groups and populate the divisions with them, again, if you're using divisional accounting. Then when I get ready to run a report like APRT, and I'll do a new one time just for illustration purposes. It is not a range. That's a little bit distracting. So here in the divisions, you can still put in a range of divisions, like from 10 to 20 or 30 to 50, but your divisions may not fall within a range, which is where the division group comes in handy. The division group is an option. So here's what where I put in the NE for Northeast or whatever that short code is. And it does not give me an option at this point to do NE Southeast or something like that. It's only for one division group. Okay, that's that feature. And it's on this list of reports. Okay, next is invoice processing. I can now, when I run invoice processing, it doesn't matter if I print the invoices. This has to do with processing of the invoices. Could be my end of day, could be one-off. The range has now been added of the shipped date, which is extremely convenient because some of the other date range, promise date, is not necessarily very helpful. This at least allows us to say, I want to set up my nightly invoice processing to run based on a specific ship date. It could be today's ship date. It could be yesterday's. Ideally, it's today's ship date, and just run it. So let me show you what that looks like. And that's in OEEPI. Order entry, process invoices. Oh, spell right, Kathy. So I'll do this as just a new one time for illustration purposes. I'll print it to view, then I don't have to tell it a printer. So here, the very last option, ship date, to, from. As always, no matter what you put into the ranges, if you enter in a list of orders, it overrides the ranges. It ignores whatever is in those ranges and uses whatever you put in the list of orders. But if you're not using the list, then it will use whatever is in your ranges. So in case you didn't know it, or as a reminder, list trumps whatever you put in the ranges. Okay. Next feature. We go from reports to a little bit more wild. So the next one is the payment import from Excel. So first off, this is a single payment. This is not a lockbox. So this is, let's say, your customer has sent you a check, and it's for 200, 300, 400 invoices, including credits and stuff like that. So they send it to you with remittance advice, or you go to their website and download the remittance advice. So this is for a one check at a time import. So this will allow you to import the customer cash receipts transactions from an Excel file, not a CSV, but an Excel file containing remittance information. So, and then it will apply that payment to the invoices that are listed. So I just want to make sure, because people hear this and think, oh my gosh, this is instead of lockbox, but it really isn't. It's for a single check, a single payment to multiple invoices for a vendor. Now, and yes, it can be used for, what am I looking for? It can be used for a group posting. So if you're using the accounts receivable group, where you're grouping multiple customers in, so it can be used for that. It can be used for split pay. But I don't want you to think that this is for, oh, I've got 50 different checks and I can import it this way. So this is for a one payment at a time. The Excel file must be formatted in a single sheet, 3 columns, only 3. And so these are the specifics. The invoice number can be followed by a hyphen, then the suffix, but that's optional. But it may be handy for those times when you've got multiple suffixes to do that, to edit, to put that in. The dollar amount, it can be a debit or a credit. The reference, which is optional, that's additional information. the column header is case sensitive. And I'll do an illustration just so you can see what is meant by that. So this box here shows you an illustration of how it should be formatted: invoice, amount, reference, and type it just like that. Don't make it all caps. Don't make it anything fancy. Just invoice, amount, reference. And these headings for the columns are required. It will not import without those. Do not put alpha or special characters in the first two columns. Obviously, you can put them in the reference field, but that's alphanumeric. It's not as sensitive for the optional reference. As you may know, the reference field is 24 characters, so don't exceed that, or it will only take the first 24 characters. And the reference data is optional. So what I'm going to do is show you two spreadsheets. The first one I'm going to show you is the it won't work. So this is going to be the demonstration of the it won't work because of something as silly as I used all caps on the header. Other than that, this file is identical to the file that does work. So I first want to show you this one, which I've called cleverly demo with headers, because I'm so creative. So where you go in for this is going to be your regular cash receipts posting, ARECE. And this is going to look like nothing special when you first go in here. Pops open a journal. I'm going to say this is check 67. Reference is optional. I'm not going to put anything in there. I'm going to put in the dollar amount of my check. This check is also going to include credits that the customer wants to take. So I'm going to just post these to the customer. And then let me show you what this spreadsheet looks like, because I'm going to demo a few things with it. So this is an illustration of the customer that is, all of these are credits that they're saying they want to take. Then I have the invoices that they want to pay off. Then this one is going to be for me to demonstrate to you what happens with those customers that might be a little bit dyslexic. Not that that happens, but do you ever have customers that put the wrong invoice number in, and you may wonder, okay, how does it handle that? So I'll show you an illustration with that. So I'm just going to shrink this down. Okay, so you'll notice, so I just got past that first screen, that this new feature, import from Excel, is there. I used my little coloring book and colored that in just to make it easier to spot. So I'm going to click on import from Excel, and all it wants here is where's the file. So I'm going to first show you with the bad file. So I'm going to do that and click on import file. This max lines is how many lines to enter. You can increase that if you'd like to. I'm not making something very complicated. And this is what you'll get. The imported file contained no lines or was formatted incorrectly. Please check the file and try again. That's only because I used all caps on the headers. Wow. So I just figured I would show you that so that we could complain together, but actually not for that, just so that you could see that something as simple as using all caps on the headers can create that. So now I'll go in and I will import the correct one. Click on import file. And this shows me the list of items that I'm importing. You can scroll through and look at it and say, yeah, this all looks fine. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to click accept. If I don't select it, accept didn't show up. So click accept. But wait, there's more. Then it gives you the rules. Auto apply invoices based on the invoice number. Auto apply credits based on the invoice number. Auto apply unapplied cash based on amount. So you can include unapplied caches. And my file actually does include an unapplied cache. And so what this is saying is auto apply it if I find that unapplied cash dollar amount. Set paid in full when the invoice number and amount matches. So these are your standard auto apply features. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to click on submit. And you will see that it said, hey, this invoice, the invoice number was not found. So I'm going to go and take a look at that item and say, you're right. Hold on a second, right over here. You're right. It's actually 4638. 4638. And I'm going to save that. So I'm just basically demoing to you what happens with a typo, and I'm going to get out of this and cancel that work. And it doesn't kick me fully out, but I have to put in the customer again. So I'll put in my customer, click on next, and then I'm going to import it again. And actually, while I'm doing that, let me show you. Do I have an illustration of just a bunch of credits? I didn't show an illustration of unapplied cash, but if you had an unapplied cash, you could have invoice 0 and then the unapplied cash dollar amount, and it would know that invoice 0 is an unapplied cash. I've been asked that question before too. So I'm going to import from Excel, go back and import that file. And it's kind of nice because I can actually have that file open and be playing around with it, making sure that it works. So I'll import the file, select all, accept it, click on this, submit, and you see at the bottom it says matching in progress, and it popped me onto the quick entry tab. So I could click on invoices, credits, debits, but on the quick entry tab, take a look at this and you'll see paid in full, and it found the invoices, it found the credits. And then I can go on ahead and apply it. I think it's kind of handy and really beautiful. And then if I had any differences and I wanted to go in and adjust them, fine, but it's just as easy for me to go in and adjust it on the spreadsheet. If I want to click on finish, it then takes those, updates them, pays them, just as if I had gone in and if I'm ready to update, I'll say, yeah, sure. And that's done. And then I can post my next one or whatever. Now I'll show you my last piece, which is customer. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a moment. On your ARIC, accounts receivable inquiry on customer, whether you are on CSD or you're in GUI, you have had this feature for a long time to be able to see credit exposure. A lot of people don't realize that it's an underutilized area of the system to click on the credit exposure tab. But aside from the fact that it's functionality that has existed, it's now been enhanced. And so it's been enhanced with a few things. I would like to talk about what some of those are. So first is you can now use this callback date to say, I want to look for items with a callback date. You can also go in and on this, on the grid, we've added, Infor has added multiple new columns. So one of the complaints, so for those who have used this feature before, one of the complaints that people have with it is it's not an aging. Well, now it is. So you can now, there's now the columns for 30, 60, 90, 120, however you have your columns broken out for your aging buckets is now included, and so much more. So I'm going to get in here. This one shows better than it explains. So I'll go into ARIC, which is my customer inquiry, while leaving the customer blank. So I could fill in a specific customer and ship to and group and use the credit exposure tab. But what I'm looking for is a wide open view of all of my open accounts receivable. So for that, I'm leaving everything here blank, no customer, no ship to, no group, nothing there. And I'm going to click on the credit exposure tab. So that credit exposure now shows me all of the open accounts receivable that I have for across all of my accounts. Now that was available in GUI and has been around for a long time, but there's a few things here that are different, that are new. The first is this callback date. So we can add a callback date, and I'll show you in a moment how that works. And then the second is all of these additional columns that show you like so much more information. When the account was opened, callback date, future invoice balance, your aging buckets, and more than I can look at on this screen.
That you on this other line? No. I have another call.
Can you mute whoever that is, Brian? Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm going to take this first and I'm going to export it to Excel. So when I export this to Excel, I have all of my open accounts receivable here in a spreadsheet where I can parse it, I can filter it, I can look for specific dollar amounts, specific customers. And this is, again, like I said, this is a lot more information than I want to scroll around on the screen and look at. So the whole thing dumps out to Excel, which is a beautiful thing. The next thing I want to show you is a feature call is a few other ways of limiting this. Let's say I want to limit this to just customers that owe me $25,000 or more. So I can do that. And I can also say, I don't want to just see the customers. I also want to see any ship tos that owe me within that just by a click of the button. So if you see, those are the filters that I can use. And then the last thing that I want to show you while we're looking at this is this column. And again, where these columns are is up to you. You can move them around. This column called callback date. I can put in here, hey, this customer, I want to call them back on the 1st of the month. And that's all you have to do. But if there's a problem with the terms, then you have to go in and fix the terms on that customer. So it won't hold that. So I'm going to clear that out. And that's a separate maintenance issue. Let's see if this one is good. Yeah. So I have to go in and fix those customers so that it doesn't do that. Let me try this one. Okay. So I can put that information to the callback date. And then here I can get rid of this dollar filter. And I'm going to say, I want to see everybody that's got a callback date through the 2nd. And then I can also put in my credit manager if I want to filter to just my credit manager for that. And so you can see here that I've got only those that have callback dates in them that are through the 2nd, which is what the filter was that I did. Okay, I finished with it, Brian. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, we sure do, Kathy. So let me get started here. So let's see. Will the import Excel option in ARECE work with split check?
Yes.
Okay, that was easy. So thank you, Shakira. And Kim asked, is the credit exposure the same as the period analysis report?
Is the credit exposure, so hold on a moment. Is the credit exposure the same as the period analysis report? No, I would say it's probably not the same thing. I'm going to say that it, the ARRP, which is the period analysis report, has got a slightly different way of looking at the information, but it should age the same way. And I would take it and test it and see which one you prefer. The ARRP has more detail on it, but if I'm just looking for a quick list of my open AR and aging, that ARIC credit exposure is fantastic.
Okay, great. Couple more. Will the ARECE upload allow you to upload multiple customers on a single Excel?
No, but thank you for asking. One customer at a time, or well, I should say one payment at a time. So if I've got my customers in a group, right? So if, the functionality ARSG accounts receivable setup group, I have my customers together in a group. I can use that import from Excel with the group to apply it to, or a split pay to apply it to, but not multiple customers if they're not in a group or if it's not a split pay.
Great, thank you. And then thank you, Joe. And then Jennifer asks, can you short pay invoices in the Excel import?
Yes.
And if you can, what happens if you short pay a credit in the Excel file?
You mean will it leave it left over? It will leave it left over. And then what that looks like depends on your administrator option for whether or not you want those unused credits to like resequence. That's mostly with unapplied cash. But yeah, it will allow you to do it and have short application of it. Yes. So partial application.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
But with any of these, but I will say this, for any of these new features, play around with them in your test environment or in your train environment before you play around with them for real in production.
Great. And then Kenji asked, what if amount is different in Excel sheet to import?
It will let you know that there's either an over or underpay, and then you get to decide in ARECE what to do with it. Excellent question.
Okay, great. And just a few more questions. How can I tell which reports can export to Excel other than this list?
Oh, the only way that you can tell is if the drop down shows that you can that you can print it to Excel. So if your output option in the drop down shows you that it can be sent to Excel, that's the only way you can see it. Otherwise, it's just and the reason that that's important to note is so today there's 17 reports that can go to Excel. But that doesn't mean that Infor is going to freeze it at that. At some point in the future, they may add additional reports. One that I'd like to see output to Excel is GLRA, the Transaction Activity Report. It's not yet available in Excel, and I'd like to see that.
Okay. Another question, is there security for running reports by division group?
Yes, actually there is. So, you know what? Let me stop sharing and share my screen in full and show you where that is. One moment, please. So go over here and I'll get out of the customer inquiry. So and again, I do not know, everybody who's on this call is under different sorts of governance. This is in general handled by the your IT team. So this isn't something that just anybody would get into. But you can go into, let's see, it's the other options, there's the controls. I always have fun figuring this one out. Let me just keep scrolling. Let's see. Here you go. So in here is where you can say the divisions and the division groups that people are allowed into. So this is the operator security. So you can do it an operator at a time, or you can do it if you're using a role-based security for a role on the other options tab, or in role-based security. It doesn't really care which tab that is.
Okay. And then the last question I have at the moment is, how is callback date used and can I report on it?
So the callback date, that would be that one that I just showed you from the customer inquiry, ARIC. And let me click on credit exposure. So this callback date, this is the only place that you can get it right now. Now, for those of you, so it's not on any reports other than this this export of this grid. Having said that, it does write back to a field called callback date on the customer and on the ship to. So in ARSC and ARSS, those have not been exposed. So if I go and I look at ARSC customer setup or ARSS ship to setup, I don't see that field, but it is writing back on those, even though I don't see it when I'm doing my customer master and my ship to master setup and maintenance. So I'm sure if it's there, it can be queried. It's probably information that goes out to the data lake, but standard within the system, the only place so far is this screen where I can put in the callback date and then I can export this this spreadsheet. It does not show on the aging reports or other reports, at least not yet.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the questions I have for now. And Becky, thanks for jumping in here with the for GLA sign up for ERS with the link there. So that's awesome. So I would like to take the opportunity here with 100 plus attendees on this particular webinar to make you aware of the fact that our webinar for next month is with Avalara, which for those of you who may not know Avalara, they're all about tax in multiple states and counties and so forth. So they maintain that, and it's a great solution for folks. That is going to be in July on the 18th. Please look in your inbox for the sign up for that. And if there are no additional questions, I will just ask you, Kathy and Deanne, if you have any final thoughts before we sign off.
Go for it, Deanne. She's like, thanks.
No, I have no final thoughts, except maybe I could quick share if everybody would just give me a moment, that I did find on that question with the invoice number.
Oh, good.
If you've got multiple, it shows up like this. So then you pick which vendor it is that you want to go in and look at. But again, you don't need to know the vendor. It does show you all of them that it shows up on.
Great question. Great illustration. Yay. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys so much. Well, at this point in time, then I'd like to thank Deanne and Kathy for their presentation today. A lot of good information, a lot of good detail. We did record the session, so everybody that's attended here will receive a copy of the presentation, and that should be out to you guys within the next 24 hours. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your
Bye
day.
all. Have a great
Bye.
one.
Thank you.